Picture a quiet kitchen, late at night. You sit alone in the artificial light, holding an almost empty bag of brightly coloured, hyper-processed candy. Your stomach is physically distended against your shirt. It cramps, radiating a low-grade nausea. Your rational neocortex is screaming at you. It says to stop, that you are in physical pain, that this is making you sick. Yet, your hand involuntarily reaches for that final piece. Your jaw chews. The swallow is automatic. Why do we do this? Why do we eat until it hurts, long after the pleasure is gone? Modern culture pathologizes this behavior as a simple lack of willpower, or labels it a sugar addiction. Psychologically, it manifests as a hedonic binge, carrying a profound, quiet sense of shame. You feel a sudden loss of bodily autonomy, as if a ghost has hijacked your nervous system. In a 21st century world where the next meal is guaranteed, gorging to the point of physical illness offers absolutely zero survival utility. It only brings disease. Our modern medical framework tells us this sickness is a sign of a broken metabolism, a glitch in our hardware. But your brain is not broken. It is executing an ancient, obsolete survival script with terrifying, flawless perfection. To truly understand the human animal, we must look deeply at the brutal environments that nearly destroyed it. We must rewind the biological clock millions of years, back to an era when the entire Earth began to turn cold. The origin of your sickening compulsion for sweetness begins roughly 15 million years ago, during the Miocene epoch. Our primate ancestors lived comfortably in lush, year-round tropical fruit forests spread across Europe and Asia. But then, the Earth underwent a dramatic, terrifying cooling phase. The vibrant forests began to recede, dying off and giving way to highly seasonal, unforgiving landscapes. Starvation quickly became the absolute apex predator. Step back into the visceral world of the pleistocene hunter-gatherer. Imagine standing on an ancient savanna that is dry, dusty, and relentlessly bright. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human tongue navigated a desolate, brutal landscape dominated by fibrous tubers, lean wild game, and bitter leaves. Our ancestors lived entirely on a razor-thin caloric tightrope, just one failed hunt away from complete extinction. In this forgotten world, starvation was not an abstract concept discussed in anthropological textbooks. It was a gnawing physical ache in the gut. It was a constant, looming shadow accompanied by the cries of lethargic, vulnerable infants. To survive the brutal, months-long winters, human metabolism required a biological miracle. It desperately needed a way to aggressively hoard fat when food was only temporarily abundant. Now imagine a tribal scouting party stumbling upon a wild beehive, or a hidden grove of overripe fermenting figs at the very end of summer. This was not just a meal, it was a miraculous reprieve from certain death. The rotting, sweet smell carried on the wind sent shockwaves of pure dopamine through the entire tribe. But there was no refrigeration. There was absolutely no way to preserve or store this fragile, precious bounty. There was also massive, deadly competition from scavenger birds, swarming insects, and rival apes. The tribe had hours, perhaps only minutes, to consume the calories. The physical experience of this binge was frantic, violent, and completely overwhelming to the senses. Imagine eating raw honeycomb whole, swallowing the stinging bees, the wriggling larvae, and the dirt in wide, desperate, unchewed mouthfuls. Your ancient stomach would swell against the abdominal wall, stretching painfully until you felt entirely sick to your core. Why did they ignore the pain? Because the primal brain flooded their nervous system with natural opioids, whispering a single, undeniable chemical command: eat until it is gone, or die tomorrow. Evolutionary biologists and anthropologists refer to this mechanism as the fructose survival switch. When an ancient hominid consumed heavy amounts of fructose, it entirely bypassed normal metabolic regulatory pathways. It triggered a sudden chemical cascade that deliberately suppressed leptin, the vital hormone that tells your brain you are full. It induced a state of temporary leptin resistance. Your ancestors were chemically blocked from feeling satisfied, forcing them to keep swallowing long past the point of pain. Deep in our genetic past, we suffered a specific mutation that caused the permanent loss of an enzyme called uricase. This biological accident made our hominid ancestors incredibly sensitive to fructose. It violently magnified its fat-storing capabilities, turning their bodies into fiercely efficient energy traps. Modern obesity is not a mechanical error. It is this exact survival pathway being chronically engaged by modern diets. Feeling full was a biological luxury our ancestors simply could not afford. It was a literal death sentence. The brain purposefully traded immediate digestive comfort, ignoring the bloating and the cramping, for the rapid accumulation of visceral fat. The nausea and the sickness of a binge were the exact mechanisms that insulated their vulnerable organs against the freezing temperatures of the coming winter snows. The harsh truth of our lineage is written in the concept of the thrifty gene hypothesis. Those who experienced the sickening compulsion to eat the entire grove of fruit survived the famine. Those born with natural restraint, the ones who practiced delicate portion control, simply starved to death. Their genes were violently erased from human history. Restraint was a weakness that the harsh climate did not tolerate. You are the direct, unbroken descendant of those frantic binge eaters. You carry the genetic code of the survivors who ate until they bled. But today, we live in an environment that has fundamentally betrayed our biology. We have carried the thrifty genome of starvation survivors into a world of endless, hypercaloric abundance. We are living in a permanent, inescapable state of evolutionary mismatch. The modern neon supermarket aisle is a landscape of concentrated fructose and refined sugars that our ancestors could never have comprehended. We are paying a catastrophic biological toll for this collision of worlds. By consuming processed sugar constantly, we have effectively engaged a permanent famine survival switch in a modern world where the winter starvation event never actually arrives. This biological confusion is the true root cause of the modern metabolic plague. It drives systemic inflammation, fatty liver disease, and widespread metabolic syndrome. We are desperately preparing our bodies for a famine that simply never comes. But the psychological friction we endure every single day is equally as devastating as the physical damage being done to our organs. Because ancient fruit and raw honey were incredibly rare, our brains never needed to evolve an off switch for the massive dopamine reward associated with sugar. The sweetness was always supposed to run out. Today, the sweetness never stops. Chronic exposure to processed foods relentlessly bombards our vulnerable pleasure receptors with a magnitude of chemical stimulation they were never designed to handle. Overwhelmed by this constant deafening flood of synthetic reward chemicals, the brain does the only thing it can to protect its delicate neural circuitry. It downregulates its own dopamine receptors. The melancholic result is that we slowly become numb to pleasure. We find ourselves trapped in a hollow loop, forced to consume exponentially larger quantities of sugar just to feel a baseline level of comfort. This is the tragic irony of the working machine. The profound sadness of eating candy until your stomach hurts is the realization that your body is not broken at all. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do to keep you alive against impossible odds. You are not weak, and you are not fundamentally flawed. You are simply caught in the crossfire of biological time travel. When you sit in the artificial glow of your kitchen at midnight, violently gorging on sugar despite the painful distension in your gut, you are not failing. You are experiencing the ghosts of 1 million starving ancestors reaching across time, pulling the deep levers of your brain and trying desperately to save your life.